Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 intelligent intranet in 2023. Welcome to 2023. Happy New Year! Gotta get used to saying that, 2023. I'm Mark Cashman in 2023, Senior Product Manager here at Microsoft. And on today's episode, we have a special conversation. We chat with Jeff Teper to dig into what he calls Fast Friday. That's his use of technology to record his thoughts about what he's up to each week, where he spends time, anecdotes on internal and external meetings that he's had or will have, and things that he's working on big and small all over the place. And then he shares them broadly to all Microsoft employees that have interest, whether they report within his organization or choose to follow him on something like Viva Engage. I personally watch and listen to these each week, and it helps me stay informed across Jeff's entire portfolio, and just really interesting to see where he spends time, especially when he spends on times things that I don't necessarily get visibility on, but I get visibility on them through Jeff's sharing. Fast Fridays are about capturing thoughts, putting them together, and then getting them out there. And it's okay to be scrappy, consistent, and engaging versus something that's over-polished but maybe less available or not done as often. For Jeff, as you'll hear, it's all about transparency, communication, and leadership, week to week to week. You're going to learn a bit about his approach to leadership, why he creates and publishes his Fast Fridays in the first place, and the importance of Microsoft Teams and other tools for communications, all up both in how he uses them, and hopefully you can see how you can use them, and maybe how they will derive into a future Viva tooling that's designed specifically to help amplify internal communications. More on that as we get into the episode. So get ready to grab a Teper tidbit or two, get ready to create your own Fast Friday comm, or maybe post on a Wednesday and call it Wicked Fast Wednesday, or release them each Thursday and call them In the Thick of Thursday. No matter your personal brand, let it be your opportunity to share what you're working on, to lead with visibility, openness, and to inspire those lucky enough to receive your insights. And you'll see, and of course here, it's easy to do. It just takes doing it. So let us be fantastically fast with this intro. Here is time with Jeff, right where you are, right in the Intrazone, to hear more how he keeps the SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and Mesh engineering groups up to speed week to week and opens many avenues for continuous engagement. So it may not be Friday where you are, but as they say, it's Friday somewhere in the world, or it's at least 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. But on this particular Friday, I'm doing air quotes, we are now sitting with Jeff Teper, and we're going to talk with him about something that he does that he calls Fast Friday. You'll learn how he does what he does internally to do some internal communication with his team and really broad. But first, before we get into the technology, let's get into who is this guy? Jeff, how are you doing these days?
Great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good. I know some of the traveling you've been doing recently, so as we roll up onto the end of 2022, I know you were in Copenhagen, and then you went to a few other places. Do you want to give just a little what you did recently?
Yeah, so the two big things I did is go to the ESPC conference in Copenhagen, sort of one of the larger European events for the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and then went to the Microsoft 365 conference in Vegas, and in between, visited a couple of our R&D teams in Dublin and Prague. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, and I'm glad to be taking a break at the end of the year.
Well, welcome back to the Pacific time zone. But I would classify a lot of what you did, not only great touch points with the team. It's really amazing sometimes just to think how distributed our teams are, but also to know that you are doing some one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one probably conversations and getting a ton of feedback. But you have a way of doing this now that you've established for a while that you call Fast Friday that is really meant to be a one-to-many in a very consistent way to communicate what you are focused on, what you're doing, what's of interest to you that people should know about or just might be curious about. What is Fast Friday? And then want to get into the tech of how you do it.
About a year ago, I started recording a 5-minute video every Friday that I publish out to our team. And there were sort of two motivations for it. One is, making sure everybody understood the strategy. Our team's a big team with groups around the world and partner teams across Microsoft. And a lot of new people have joined the team, and even people who have been with the team for a while are focused on their particular area. And so it's really clear to me, based on feedback and surveys, that I have to work harder to make sure people understand the big picture. And so make it simple and clear and sort of repetition, but make it a good use of people's time. Don't ask people to attend an hour all hands every week, for example, or an hour AMA. We do that once a month, but repetition is key for strategy, and I've kept it to 5 minutes. The second thing is I heard from people is sort of demystifying senior leadership. I think, gosh, we're just all working on the same stuff together, but every now and then somebody says, well, how do the leaders at Microsoft make these decisions? Or where do you spend your time? It's a big mystery to me. And so I literally go through my calendar and pick 5 to 10 things I did that week and just explain what I did. I went to the ESPC conference, and it was great to talk to people there. I visited 2 of our development teams in Dublin and Prague and learned about the specific projects there. So those are my 2 goals, is to make sure that people understand the strategy and how all our work week by week relates to it, and then demystify leadership a little bit. And then hopefully that gives people context and they get excited and inspired and get to ask hard questions and give feedback as well.
I had thought that there was some old SharePoint server that you would go and, like an oracle, you would sort of, ask the question, oh, SharePoint server, please tell me what I need to do. No, I've seen, of course, a number of these Fast Fridays. I do consume them. Like Jeff said, they're very quick and easy. And to the point of the focus of accessibility, inclusivity, exclusive, all the things that I think are a benefit both in the technology and in the culture really come through. And it's a window into your world that I see where I'm like, wow, Jeff really does connect with a lot of people, both customers, partners, and internal. And so the impetus of this episode, we thought, was to get into how you do it. Just the tactical, practical. It sounds to me like you would encourage others to do, especially others that are, in leadership positions that are intending for people to be flying in the same direction and to be aware of what other people are doing. I think this is something that you mostly do on your own, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to understand and really share with the Intrazone listeners how you do it.
I, by design, am doing it on my own without. People have offered me help, but I actually don't want the help because A, I want to be very efficient on the time, but B, I want the learning from using the tools. So I record a 5-minute video. I basically make a single slide of what I did that week with a few bullets. And I deliberately have used different video recording approaches. I've used Clipchamp, I've used Stream, I've used a Teams meeting recording, I've used PowerPoint Cameo with export. And so I've used sort of 4 or 5 different video recording approaches. And, it gives me a chance to use them and give feedback. The last one I did, is sort of a longer year-end one, and I wanted to spice it up a little bit. So I used PowerPoint Cameo with some export capabilities to video. And then I have a SharePoint site called Fast Friday where I create a new page from a Fast Friday template, put a little bit of text in, insert the video in line, and then publish that. I share from that SharePoint page to Outlook, to our team. I copy and paste the link in our team's announcement channel for the Teams org. I paste it in the storyline in Viva Engage. And then our SharePoint team site for the SharePoint team, we have news links, and I typically post that there as well. So I'm recording it one of 5 different ways to try different things, and I'm publishing it 4 different places just to hope that I catch everybody. And that's led to some feedback that I give all the teams, including, we'll probably talk about this in a little bit. One of the new Viva modules we're working on, Viva Amplify, where I want like a little more automation on the workflow of multi-channel publishing and analytics on it. So there's a practical side to this as well as communicating with the team.
Can you talk about that, the last mile, once you've done the work and you've put it out there, what do you see as the engagement side of it? Once you've published, are you getting feedback? Are people leaving you comments or sending you notes about X or Y?
Yeah, as a leader, you need to be grounded in the data and get the spectrum of feedback. So I do look at the viewer data, and I would say on any given week, a third to half the team watches it. I don't have the longitudinal how many people have watched one, but so that says many hundreds of people are finding this useful. I do get a bunch of feedback from people unsolicited. Thank you for doing this. It makes leaders more approachable. I understand the bigger picture now, et cetera. And then I read, we have our employee surveys that would previously, we used to call them the Microsoft poll. We now call them employee signals that uses our Glint tool that you're familiar with, that we're integrating with Viva. And I go through that, both the numbers and the comments, and it gives me a sense that we're doing very good as far as communicating to people, but we're not reaching everybody because there's a set of people. Maybe it's 10, 20% of people in the team say, I don't understand our strategy. And I'm like, oh my God, all I want is 5 minutes a week. So it's just good to get that spectrum of feedback from people who say, thank you for doing this. I've never been in a team that's been this transparent as the ODSP and Teams team. And then I get people like, I don't understand our strategy. And like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? Should I make it 1 minute fast Friday? Because 5 minutes is about as small as I can get it.
I mean, timing wise, I think it is, myself included. I'd love 10 minutes from Jeff every week, but 5 minutes is practical for your time. And I think it's probably the most relevant, how much time do actually people have to consume it? And especially if it's a weekly thing, then it's a touch point. It's an expectation, dip in, dip out, and just get a little bit of that guidance.
Yeah. And you can play it in the background while you're doing whatever, writing code, cleaning up email or Teams. So the goal was to not have it be something that was high concentration with a lot of complexity. We do more of a monthly AMA and twice a year all hands with a lot more content, as you know, like much more of a fire hose of all the things we're doing and AMA around them. But this is just supposed to be like a micro dose of strategy, if you will.
Well, let me tell you from a consumption perspective, because I do get it. Mostly I see it in email and I see it in as a Teams notification, which really comes through, the Viva Engage Now as a story. So for me, it's really easy. It's very visible. It's not something I go looking for, not to say that I wouldn't, but it is something that I see and, within that day, go in and click in because, of course, I'm interested and I do want to keep up to date. The next thing that I do, because you typically, like you said, put it in one slide, bunch of bullets, I just scan the bullets. Not that I skip ahead because there's not enough to skip ahead. Honestly, you really do get to, the meat of it pretty quickly. But I do scan it just to see like, gosh, that is really something I want to flag this for sure, not to miss it. Or at least to know, like you said, I can maybe play it in the background and refer my most attention to that spot that kind of caught my attention. It is not a huge commitment for me to find time. I usually just kind of do it when I can, or I do it almost immediately. So what I want to hear, and I think to kind of continue on now we know how you do it, and I love that you're probably giving the team a ton of feedback. I just tried this and I'd really like it if. But let's imagine maybe sometime in January or February, you're at a community days or you're engaging, with somebody at the EBC who is at the C-level or at least in a leadership position. They say, oh, I've heard this thing you do Fast Friday. Can you tell me about it? You might share the tech side of it, but I want to kind of transition to talk about the why you do it and maybe what you would tell somebody either as a tip or a trick or a reason why that they should also consider it.
So people get energized by the work we're doing. There's really multiple reasons. One is I want to energize people about the amazing work we're doing in a team. I feel everybody's in a different situation with their workplace, but I feel like we're very fortunate at Microsoft, so fortunate to get to work with people on complex projects that mean so much to customers. And so I want people to be energized, foster collaboration, encourage people's best work, encourage people's creativity. And I want to break down the sort of mystery of senior leadership. In my career at Microsoft, I've seen a lot of initiative taken by people newer to the company, lower in the organization as we think about the internet shift, the cloud shift, the AI shift. And so, I want leadership to be more approachable and have people feel like they can take initiative on it. That's the main thing. And I do it because I understand people are super, super busy. People want a sense of understanding and purpose for their work. And it's very easy. We have big teams, so somebody could come along and be working on the low-level protocols that SharePoint uses to update documents and servers, and be working closely with the Azure networking team, and maybe miss a little bit of the why they're doing that. We're doing that because we want to help people foster more collaboration around content where it's a source of truth, have it be friction-free for co-authoring and access to any device, but have it be very secure, have it be searchable, have AI augment the process. People want simple to use tools that are fast. And so hopefully for that new engineer who joined our team working on networking protocols, they get inspired about not just the technical problem, but the why we do what we do, and why, frankly, we're so invested in it. We build things in Microsoft 365 companies find useful. They pay us, and that lets us invest in the people to build the software and the data centers to run it. And so we shouldn't take any of that for granted. We should be inspired and energized to do a great job for customers.
You recently joined in on the recent Envision Season 3, Episode 1, kind of our broader business-oriented, business-focused outbound. And you had a conversation with Christy Smith about listening and leading in the modern workplace. And I believe you explored how the business today and the technology and all the innovations, ours and, of course, a lot of other innovations out there, are addressing the needs of the future. When you think about the leadership in the future and again, roles beyond your own, as you see them at Microsoft and beyond, what is the role of teams from a communication perspective? You just talked a little bit around collaboration, and we've been talking about communications. But if you were to lump that all together, how do you see leadership invoked through teams as a tool for others in the future?
I think this is really critical, and we had a good conversation with Christy at Envision. The one thing I would encourage people to read is our work trend index that we've published, because just to give you one data point, 87% of employees feel they're productive, whereas 12% of leaders feel their employees are fully productive. And there's subsequent things about, like, leaders feel like they're engaging their employees, whereas employees don't feel fully engaged. There's a number of gulfs, as you know, from the work trend index between leadership's perception of what's going on and the people actually doing the work. And so Teams and Viva Engage are ways to break down the silos of communications within a team, between leaders and teams across the organization. And so part of our goal here is to encourage modern leaders to be visible, approachable, open to frank feedback. And, that can be tricky because sometimes people will ask you a hard question, and sometimes the answer to those hard questions of the leader is, yes, you're right. We need to do better there. Or sometimes the leader might have to say, look, come on, I don't agree with your point of view. I respect that you've raised it. Thank you for raising it, but we're going to do X as opposed to Y, and let me explain why so you understand it better. And, how you do that as a leader in a way that's not condescending. Leading is not just saying yes to everybody about everything. It's being clear and inspiring about the choices and trade-offs you're making. So, we see in the discussions we have with other companies, other leaders in the Work Trends Index, and we saw it, when Christy from Accenture seen it in her work, that leaders need to engage with employees and get better and better at it.
That void that the WTI, whether it is accurate or not, it's the perception that it's so different, 87% versus 12%, meaning the leaders, maybe aren't necessarily trusting that being at home or working, in a different way is leading to either equal or more productivity. And the reality is certainly probably somewhere in between. But discovering that and, being proactive, I think, is what I really see the value of what you're doing with Fast Friday. is being proactive, as much as you can share and be transparent, hopefully to inspire others to do the same, and also to then, be open to that feedback. I remember many years back with just the town hall, they always have the time for Q&A, which should be the value of any, time when people come together, and whether it's a position of leadership or just somebody giving a great session, always leave that 5 or 10 minutes for questions. And it's really important when there's a hard question that comes through that there was a place for them to ask it. Obviously, the value of the leader or the person providing an answer, even if it's not a 100%, exactly what you were hoping you'd hear, and the willingness to do it. And I think that space is really important. So here is the 2 lightning rounds. I'm curious, what is the PC that you use these days? Are you on the latest, greatest, maybe something you can't even tell us about? Or do you have a daily driver that you can share?
I move around with a Surface Laptop 4, and at home I have a setup with a monitor with multiple inputs and a Logitech keyboard that can be paired to 3 different devices, and I switch back and forth between an M1, so about a year-old Mac, and the Surface Laptop 4. I do keep an older Surface device around just to test our stuff on machines that could be 4 or 5 years old, just so I live through it. But that's my main config, is a machine at home that I go back and forth between Windows and the Mac pretty much like every other day.
You truly are customer zero.
I try to be. I think outside the engineers working on the code, I was the first one who deployed the M1 build of Teams on my machine, and the difference is very material, so that's good. But yeah, and occasionally there is an ebb and flow of a new Surface device. If I was using that now, I wouldn't tell you, but periodically, yes, Panos calls me up and a few other people and says, hey, don't let anybody see you using this. But, when we did the Surface Pro X, that was, a big leap in performance on ARM, he had us try that out before we could talk about it.
I have this vision that sometimes you might be interacting with your computer with a headset or something these days with Teams and Mesh bubbling through, but we'll leave that for the future.
I do have Oculus Quest 2 right here. So yes, I am a user of Mesh.
That's great. Well, the second question is just more of if you have a recommendation, but is there something that the Teper household either has flagged for viewing during the holidays or something that you've seen recently that you would recommend?
There's this show on, I think it's Apple TV, called Slow Horses with Gary Oldman and Kristen Scott Thomas. That one's pretty good. I like that.
Slow Horses. So I think if we round out, we've talked about Fast Fridays, and now it's all about slow horses. That's awesome. Well, let's end there. That is a nice way to slow down with Jeff Teper over the holidays. Thank you for your leadership always. Your Fast Fridays, I think, really have been something that is kind of a breath of fresh air. I think you've always been accessible in terms of what is Jeff thinking, what is the org focused on, what is the most important thing these days. But to hear the kind of the weekly byline, here's what's important now. Broadly, hopefully the direction of the company, but here's what's popping now, and here's why and how. I think it's really important. I'm really glad that you do it, and I'm really happy that you shared what you do here.
Thank you, Mark. And you're a great role model for all you do on both internally and externally, and you remind all of us to maybe have a little more fun with things than we would otherwise do. Whether you're posting about lists or OneDrive or SharePoint or something like that. So maybe I'll make the Fast Fridays just a little more light than my sort of 100 miles an hour through the top of mind.
I see a title change coming. Fun Fast Fridays.
Yeah, there you go.
I know that might not be like the most innovative, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, no matter how you do it, it'll be well received. It's great to spend time with you.
Thank you. You too, Mark.
So now you know what a Fast Friday is, how Jeff approaches the Fast Friday, and what I really hope is that you understand why, with that little bit of, yes, you too can create a Fast Friday, or whatever you call it. Let us move now to events. This is just a first swath at some of the events that I've learned about that are coming in 2023 that I think are worth sharing and also worth attending. The first one that I came across is in Brooklyn Park, Minneapolis on January 21st. This is the M365 Twin Cities event. In April 2nd and 3rd of 2023 in Austin, Texas, is an external conference called Culturati. This one for us is where we will have a number of people from the Viva team, and this link that I have in the show notes will help you stay informed of when the registration actually opens up. Next is just looking a little bit further out in May 2nd through the 4th, with a couple of pre- and post-workshop days. This is the Microsoft 365 conference in Vegas. This one will have Jeff Teper as keynote, plus a number of other keynotes, of course, sessions and whatnot. It'll be a pretty large show, and we're intending to have a pretty good Microsoft presence there. This is May 2nd through the 4th in Vegas. Next is May 13th, 2023, Collab Days Poland. Collab Days is kind of a new offering similar to SharePoint Saturdays. They've been going for a number of years, and it's something that we are also helping raise a visibility to, especially free events on the Community Days website. So you can go read more about Collab Days Poland if you're there, but also keep abreast of the different Collab Days and Community Day events that are coming within 2023. And last, an event in Dusseldorf, Germany. This is the 10th anniversary of the European Collaboration Summit, May 22nd through the 24th, 2023. And you'll certainly hear all about Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, and Power Platform. It's a great event. It's run by a great event team, and it's always a good size. If you really love to network and you're in the European Union, then you certainly should get on over to the EU Collab Summit, Dusseldorf, Germany, May 22nd through the 24th. All right, that is the first look into 2023 for events. We will have a lot more events as we hear about them throughout the year, and we will always include them in the events section of each Intrazone episode. I want to thank our guest, Jeff Teper, for sharing how he routinely communicates internally and how you too can learn from Jeff and give it a try yourself. We encourage you to routinely check out our show page for links to all that was discussed here. I'll have a number of things that Jeff mentioned for the different tools and the different techniques, anything that I can link to that will help you better understand and dig into how you might learn from Jeff and then recreate in your own way your own internal communications. Just go to aka.ms/theintrazone. And if you have any questions or feedback for the SharePoint and OneDrive teams, or for myself or Jeff, you can reach us via email at theintrazone@microsoft.com. I'll make sure everything gets routed and answered as best as we can. Or you can find us out on Twitter at SharePoint, at Jeff Teper, JEFFTEPER, and at mcashman. Remember to rate and review and tell all your friends about the show. Tell all your friends about Fast Fridays and get them creating their own Fast Fridays. And of course, we hope you follow the show wherever you get your favorite tech podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Mark Cashman. This has been The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365, Fast Friday, and everyday intelligent intranet.